Hello everybody, welcome to another live stream that we're doing for the Lightbox Expo. I am Sergio Paez, I'm going to be your host tonight. And today we have an interesting topic that we're going to be talking about. It's the story artist career path. Now we're talking story this whole week. And first I want to give a couple of announcements because if you have been following our stuff, you know that we like to do visual storytelling and we like to talk about how to get into visual storytelling. And I think this is going to be a really important topic that we want to hit today. So there's a couple of things there. First off, I want to give a big shout out to everybody who's joining us today and who's going to be, who's been on our Discord channel, who's been blowing up the Lightbox Expo Discord channel. I love it. This is so awesome to get the activity. I've had so many really positive emails and responses. People who have been hitting me up on social media, all that is so fun and great. Thank you for sending those messages. If I have not responded to you yet, forgive me. I'm like scrambling to catch up with everybody's responses. And I'm also going through people's submissions on the Animatic Storyboard Challenge. We can talk a little bit about that. But first off, I just want to say hi to everybody. Remember that we're going to be doing a lot of Q&A here too. Bring your questions, bring your website, bring everything that you got to show and share it with everybody in the group. That's one of the things that we want to be doing is really engaging with each other and building our network as we do these things. So let me share my screen real quick. I want to bring up, again, our Lightbox Expo event page, and that's where you can find a lot of these talks, and we're going to be talking all week about this, and you can see all of the updates that are going to be on there. So let me go ahead and pull that up and make sure that you guys can see that. At least you know where to find it. We're going to have one central hub where everything is happening, and that way you can see what is happening and get any kind of updates that you need. So let me make this a little bit bigger. And this is our Lightbox Expo event page. You can see that on screen. You go to prostoryboardart.org/LBX2021. That's how you get to this web page. And here you're going to find this streaming event. That's what we're doing right now. You can start putting in your comments here. You can watch this on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch. Any one of those will work. And you can see our past live streams that we have. You can join our Animatic Challenge event. We can talk a little bit about that. The work is just so amazing. It's been mind-blowing. I love what's going on right now. You can also see what we're doing with the mentorship program so that the people on the waiting list got the first dibs to check out the registration page there. So that's really fun. And then you have all of the lineup that we're doing for the rest of the week. Now, I pointed out yesterday, kind of in our opening chat, that we are inviting some really big names for this week. And this is a rare opportunity that you're going to get to see these people. I think it's so special that they are making their time, they're making themselves available for us and for you. So that is just really amazing. And I really encourage you to take advantage of that. If you have any questions for these people, for these artists, these pros, I mean, guys like Robert Valley, you should know who they are. Derek Thompson, you probably know who he is, but he doesn't post much. He's not out there on social media, for example, because they're so busy working and doing amazing things. It's only when the movies come out that you see their names and you see what happens. Justin Leach, who is the creator of Eden for Netflix, is going to be joining us. That is going to be an amazing talk. I really encourage you to come join and see that. If you really want to know what happens behind the scenes of how these things start up, we're going to be asking him all kinds of questions on what he's doing, how his creative process is. Then we got a bunch of roundtables, and you can see all of the information here. I hope you can join it. One of the things that we are going to be updating is our Saturday chats, but the one that you don't want to miss is that roundtable chat. Well, I would say you don't want to miss any of them. And by the way, if you can't attend live, you can watch our replay. We're going to have all of that posted on our social media and on this event page here, so you can see that after the fact. And in fact, there's a lot of really great activities for the Lightbox Expo. So if there's a conflict, if you can't get to our stuff, you can see that replay. But I highly encourage you to come and watch this stuff live. You can ask your questions. And even beforehand, if you have any questions, you can hit us up on email or just put it into the chat right here. We love taking those questions, and that gives us material that we need to ask these pros and really kind of pick their brains about what they're doing and how they're being successful on the things that they're working on. So this roundtable is amazing. A bunch of directors from Warner Brothers, people that I work with from Lucasfilm. These guys have been at DreamWorks, all the big studios. They're going to be here, and I'm going to be joined with my buddy Chad, who we are part of the mentorship group, and we're going to be talking with these guys because I'm just saying I don't want to give it away just yet. You guys are going to find out this week. But some of the people that we have on these panel lists for this week are going to be part of our mentorship program. These amazing professionals have set apart their time to come join and teach others. This is very rare. You don't get this opportunity. You don't really see this in universities. I don't really see this online very much because these people are working. The people that are really good at what they're doing are always in demand, and it's very rare that they come out. So it's a great opportunity for all of us to really participate in and just learn from these professionals. I always learn stuff. I learn stuff from the students. I learn stuff for the people that are part of our group, and just like listening to their comments. I think it's so much fun. I just wanted to point out, I got this is a sculpture from episode 3 that I got from Lucasfilm. It was designed by Richard, one of the sculptors that worked at Lucasfilm for a long time, and he actually taught internally sculpture there. And yeah, I love it. This is a wonderful Chewbacca sculpture that was given out to the crew for episode 3. Now, I actually didn't work on episode 3. Derek Thompson worked on episode 3, and he's going to be with us, like I said, on his talk. So you want to check that out. You can ask him some questions of what it's like working with George Lucas directly. I had some experience with George when I was at Skywalker on the Clone Wars, and that was really fun. There's some amazing, it was a really amazing time. I was talking with somebody today, just reminiscing about those times, and it's just wonderful, wonderful career experience that I hope all of you guys can have an experience like that, where it's very special. We have a crew that just, comes together. You're working on a project that you're really into, and, the work, you just put all of what you're doing into your work. Okay. Now, the last announcement that I want to give here is for our Animatic Storyboard Challenge. This is something that's just so inspiring that's going on here. Let me bring this up. This is our StoryboardArt Discord. Look at all of these submissions. And, I highly encourage you, it's free to sign up to Discord, even if you're not participating in our Animatic Storyboard Challenge. And let me put that banner up as I'm talking about this, is you can still sign up. And people are asking, well, am I late? I see people have already started. Yeah, they got a head start because they signed up really early. But this is going to be going for the next 2 weeks. We're all going to be going for this week. And then next week, we're going to continue with this stuff. So, you don't have to feel like you have to rush through this. But there must be hundreds of posts here. And a big shout out to Wahab Algarmi and Chad Pickrell, who are some of the community mentors that we have who are giving feedback here, among others. I mean, there are professionals within the group that have signed up to Discord and are being generous and giving their feedback there for everybody. So that's wonderful. It's really amazing that people are participating. And we can go through some of this too. I don't want to take up all the time today with showing this stuff, but this is just a quick announcement that I just wanted to show everybody how inspiring this is. I mean, I'm just scrolling through there. It's so awesome. And I gave a couple of tips earlier today on people who have already started creating their animatics. So wonderful, wonderful work. I really appreciate everybody just working so hard. And well, you're doing it for yourself. You're going to get inspired, and you're having something for your portfolio. So that's really, really great. Okay, so let's get into this. The nature of this talk, I think, is so important. What we want to be doing, and this is stuff that I feel like wasn't covered as much as I wish it were when I was coming up as a story artist and somebody who wanted to get into the entertainment industry and be a visual storyteller. A lot of you, I mentioned yesterday, a lot of you know this, that I started out as a 2D animator. That's kind of what I studied. That's what I thought initially that how I would get into the entertainment industry. I didn't really know that much about storytelling. I didn't know that much about the pipeline and the process. And I think as I learned about it when I got to college and I got exposure to some of the professionals in the industry, that's when I really understood that there were other disciplines that were just as important, that were somewhat underrepresented. Because I think, the animators get all the flashy news, and, when somebody thinks of animation, they think of an animator, somebody who actually makes the acting and the motion come to life, the characters come to life. But you don't realize that there are a lot of other disciplines in there. There's background designers, there's character designers, and there's story artists. And that's who we are. That's who I think a lot of you who are following us want to be story artists. And I've been doing that for over 20 years. I've had a career now being a story artist, and I did work a number of years as a 2D animator. I think probably the first 5 years of my career I was a 2D animator and also designer. I did a couple character designs. I did like a children's book thing for a company. And but then, you know, I got hired as a 2D animator, and then they also had a need for doing some story work, and that's when I got the story bug. I was just hooked on that. So yesterday I kind of gave a brief introduction of how I got into this, and I also want to talk about a little bit about how I got into the career of visual storytelling, but I also want to talk about what it would take to do that today. And if I had to start all over again, what would I need to do, or what kind of advice I would give people? Now, I've seen it all. I've seen hundreds of portfolios. I've hired artists on story teams. I've been hired on story teams. I've been rejected on story teams. That happens a lot, unfortunately. But, you know, you bounce back, and that's what you got to do. So there's a lot that goes into this, and I'm sure you have questions. So make sure you keep those questions hot, and we'll get to that. I want to get to a really robust Q&A here, because I know this kind of topic always brings up a lot of really good questions. Let me have a sip of water here. Shout out to everybody who can join us. I already see really great comments happening in our chat, and that's always great. So let me talk a little bit about how I started in this business. Now, when I was in high school, I kind of knew that I wanted to get into art. I had no idea that I could make a living at this. I didn't know that video games were going to blow up. This was like, you know, mid 90s. I'm dating myself here, but this was back in the day where that was the only thing I wanted to do. I was only interested in that. I was really stubborn, a young kid, didn't know anything, very ignorant about the industry. But what I ended up discovering was that there were outlets for this. And so what I started out doing was just practicing and drawing. And that was kind of the advice that I heard was needed to get into this industry. There were only a few places that were actually teaching these things. I went to art school in San Francisco at the Academy of Art University. And there was when I first got my exposure to doing something kind of at the pro level, or at least understanding what it took to get to the pro level. And I worked on my art and drawing skills. Even there, I didn't know about storytelling or visual storytelling. So I did the college thing, and there I discovered that, wait a minute, you can actually make a living doing this stuff. I met people who were working at companies like Lucasfilm and Pixar and Disney, and there was like a Disney internship that was happening at that time. They were kind of on the tail end of a boom in 2D animation. Which went bust, by the way. So right when I was graduating, it was slim pickings. Like, it was really hard to get jobs. And even though the boom kind of happened in that late 90s, early 2000s, it like all kind of went bust around, early 2000s. And it was very hard for people to get jobs. And I was a little bit disappointed because as a 2D animator, which is what I wanted to do, there were not as many outlets there. So fortunately, I trained and I built up my portfolio, and I landed a couple of jobs. So once I started getting my work out there, and very humble portfolio, it wasn't actually anything that special. When I landed my first jobs, that's when I understood, okay, what it took to get into like the big leagues and the pro level and make, I always wanted to work in features, and I work at places like Disney and Pixar. And that was really kind of my goal. And it was really hard to do. I couldn't get there. Nobody would hire me. I would apply to these places. I would get rejected. And, that's the way it was. And I was kind of disappointed. And all I did though was I was not willing to give up. And I kept on searching for people that could actually teach me the things that I wanted to learn. And finally, just by working at studios and learning from other people, and I got mentored by other people within the studio. So that was a wonderful experience. And I'm always thankful for the generosity of other artists that were able to teach me and give me the skills that I have today. Because everything I know, I learned. Everything was taught to me. I don't consider I have any natural ability. Like, I was not born an artist. I learned how to do this stuff through hard work and practice, and I'm still practicing at it. Because you have to do that. That's the only way you get better. And that's the only way, I am absolutely convinced, the people that are really, really good at doing this stuff have practiced and dedicated their life and their career to improving themselves and finding the knowledge that's really going to unlock the potential that they want in order to get to these big leagues. So what would I have to do if I had to start all over again? And this is where I want to give you some real hard advice For those of you who are looking to get into this industry, and actually even for some of you who might already be working, you might be like entry-level revisionist, you might be working at a studio and trying to figure out how to move your way up. So the times have changed now. The internet has really blown up, and the resources that were not available to me at the time have now been so spread out and shared over and over again. And we're trying to do some of that work as well. So that's one of the reasons why we founded Storyboard Art, was to be a resource for visual storytelling and have a hub, a central place where people can learn the skills that they need to get into the industry. So that was part of it. If I had to do this all over again, I would look really hard at the people that I admire, the people that you'd want to look at. And you can look at this stuff at IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, and you could just search for people in the story departments. And if that's something you really want to do, you can see a list of names. Then grab those names and search for them. They probably have LinkedIn accounts. They probably have, most of them have Instagram pages, or some of them have some kind of online presence there. You're going to find a lot of those people here at Lightbox. In fact, you can talk to some of them directly through us when we do our live streams, because that's, these are guys that I hope that you're looking up to and learning from. They've done really, really amazing things. So I would look and see what they're doing and how they got to where they are. And one of the ways that you can do this is, and this is where I get a little bit of word of caution, is that there's the university route where you go to colleges and you kind of learn your art skills. But if you want to dedicate yourself to visual storytelling and storyboarding and get into a story department or work in kind of story development, look hard at what that curriculum is, and then look who's teaching that curriculum. This is really important because I learned the most from people who had the experience, and they were already working professionals, and they had worked at places like Pixar. I was very lucky to get access to, just out of sheer luck, that people in these companies were willing to give their time and do seminars or actually do a course. It could have been an 8-week college course that they were, they volunteered to do, basically, because, they weren't in it for the money. There wasn't much money in teaching these things, but they did it because they loved it. And I'm really thankful for that. And that's why I like to do these things that we do, so that we can give back a little bit to the community. So I would look at those and see who's teaching in those programs and see what their experience is and what the student work is when those who go through those programs, what kind of level they can produce. Have any of those people landed jobs? What kind of portfolio are they doing? Look at the work. Maybe they've posted something on YouTube, or maybe they have an Instagram account where they're posting things. A lot of artists are doing that nowadays. And I think that's really important to do your research and look at that. So if that's the case, then you'd want to research these guys and see what they're doing, see how they train themselves, and then you'll know if that program is right for you. And look at that student work and see, okay, I like what this person's doing. That really excites me. I want to be doing stuff like that. And if that's the case, then you could, that would give you a little bit more confidence that the program you're getting into is worth it. This is the word of caution, because when you get to that university level and you start spending big money, and this is like thousands of dollars, and unfortunately now it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're going to spend a lot of money doing a 4-year education, you actually get a degree. I don't put much merit into degrees, and I'm going to be honest and frank with you guys. I have never been asked to show my diploma. Never. Not once in any job. I've been a pro for like 25 years, and no one has ever asked me, what is your diploma? Can I see it? What did you graduate in? They might see like the detail on my resume. I do put it on my resume. But what they're really looking for is the portfolio. They want to look at the work that you're doing, because it's about the work in the industry that we do. It really doesn't matter where you came from. Now, that I don't want to say that, the degree is worthless. There are many valuable things about a degree. I'm very appreciative of the college education that I got. I actually spent a lot of money. I put myself into debt. I wouldn't do that again. So that's one of the things that I'm cautioning you here. If I had to do this all over again, I spent it was almost $80,000. I remember it, to go to college, and thank God I have some supportive parents that helped me through that. And but I went into debt to do this, and that's something I probably would not do again, and I wouldn't recommend it for anybody else, because I don't think you have to. Think about it. If you're going to spend $100,000 or whatever the cost might be to go to this crazy 4-year university, you better have the most amazing portfolio. That better be worth more than 100,000. Otherwise, there are many more outlets out there that you can learn for a lot less. Take that 100K if you're willing to spend that much money. I mean, take half of that and buy yourself some equipment. You can get a rockin' computer for like $2,000, right? If you really have that kind of money, you can buy yourself a Cintiq monitor, this fancy thing that you want to draw on. But you don't even need that. You could get a tablet for much less, an iPad Pro. Draw on that and you'd be fine. What you really need is somebody to teach you the skills and get you to where you want to be. So that's what I would do now. Now, what kind of resources are available? I could put the shameless plug for Storyboard Art. You can see the stuff on our page. I don't have to speak much about that. And thankfully, there's a lot of people who have kind of, promoted our stuff. And, like I get all kinds of really nice comments from my book that I wrote with Anson Jew. And that's wonderful to hear. So I'm happy that the resources that we have put out there are really helping people. And what I do encourage you to do, though, is really look hard at all of these online resources that are there. If you have the opportunity to mentor or to kind of shadow somebody that you admire, and it could just be that you reach out to them by email. And we have a mentorship program too. I don't want to get too deep into that now. We're going to be opening that up to the general public tomorrow. A bunch of you guys have seen that already because we did open it up for VIP access to those that are on our waiting list. And we have signups already, which is wonderful. But you can see that on our webpage. I will say, though, that check out all of the resources that you have. And that goes from around the world. There are things in Europe, there are things in Asia, there are things in North America, and probably South America, all over the world that you can learn from. You might be surprised that people, even in your local town, might know somebody. They might actually have done this before, been in art or some kind of entertainment industry, because it's so broad nowadays. You got video games, you got mobile access, you got all kinds of devices that you can create content for, and then you have the entertainment industry, which is like film and TV and streaming. It's huge. It's a huge industry, this artwork. So I'm coming at this from a perspective of somebody who's worked in the industry for a long time, and I've made my career and my living doing this without having to take any side jobs. And I was 100% dedicated to art. And that's what, I know many other people that have done this. So it's very funny when I get these messages of, people who are scared, like, I'm going to take architecture and fall back on that. Or they're doing programming and engineering at the same time they're doing art. And I always ask, well, wait a minute, what is it that you like to do more? And you really have to choose. And if you are passionate about it, and it doesn't matter what it is, it could be music, it could be dance, it could be whatever, finance, if you're into that kind of thing. But if you're into art and storytelling, that a lot of us are into, if you're really passionate about it, you can make a good living, you can have success doing this, and you can stay employed because there are so many more outlets nowadays to do this than there were before. And that's really, really important to do that. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about this before we get into some of the questions. Is what does it take to start when it comes to doing visual storytelling? Now, the first thing that I would do is really understand where you are, what kind of level you're at. If you're a complete beginner who has never done this before, but you have a desire, you love movies, you like to sketch, you like to draw, what I would do is find somebody that you can trust. And this could be on our Discord channel, for example. That's why we have that free resource. You could start posting your work and get some honest feedback and be like, hey, tell me what you think of my work. Okay. And then, hopefully you get some honest feedback. They might say, oh, this is really great. I love your characters. I love your expressions. But they might say, hey, have you thought about your compositions? Have you maybe thought about doing something with a little more depth and making it a little more cinematic? Those are things that you might get as comments. And then once you have that, you might discover that, oh, you actually have something that you can use and expand on. You can learn from it, okay? So that's what I would do, is really start to see what skill level you are at first. And then the next thing that I would do is draw every day. This is something that's so super important. Like, let me pull this up here. This is my sketchbook that I've carried around recently, and you can see it's about half full. The first couple pages, let me kind of flip it. How do I do this so you guys can check it out? I'll do it like this. Let's see, the reflection is a little bit off. But this is when I was traveling recently in Brazil. That's upside down. And anyway, this is kind of my travel sketchbook. I was at a cafe. Sometimes I flip it on the side to draw. And I don't care. This is for me. I don't care who's looking at it. And maybe I'll hold that up a little bit closer. It's a little bit blurry. I do story notes, and sometimes let's see, is that out of focus? I'll do, kind of comments and, ideas and sketches. And so this is my sketchbook. I carry this around everywhere, and I have tons of these. I filled up just boxes and boxes of these sketches. Drawing kids. I love that. And they're a great inspiration and model. They can be, really fun to get some expressions. And they don't stay still, so you have to do a lot of gesture drawing and those kinds of things that are really important and fun. So this is kind of a note-taking device that I use, but you want to draw every day, every waking minute that you have available to yourself. Draw. Really improve your hand-eye coordination and what I call a lot of pencil mileage, right? And you actually put it down, and it just helps. Now I have a traditional sketchbook that I like to use because I can, put in my back pocket. If I'm at a coffee shop, I'll bust it out and start drawing. But it really doesn't matter what you draw. You have a pet, draw your pet. You have family members at home, draw them. You're watching TV, can you draw them while you're watching TV and maybe listening to the show? Maybe you want to draw what's on TV, right? You can pause it, or you can try and do kind of gesture drawing things and see if you can remember, build your visual memory and start drawing that. So that's the one big advice that I tell a lot of people. Carry a sketchbook with you. It could be a tablet. I don't care if it's an iPad Pro. It doesn't matter. You can draw with that. You can draw with these fancy digital pens that you sit down and you start drawing there. And those are cool because you can actually record the process, post that on Instagram or your social media. And if you do any of that, tag us so we can comment and check out how you're doing it. So those are all really fun and important things that you could be doing that right now. It doesn't take any effort. It doesn't take any money to really get that going. So talking about money is how much would it cost to get into visual storytelling and actually get an education? Now that really depends. You could go the college route. In many places there are like community colleges or kind of trade schools where you can learn art and figure drawing. I would look at art academies. There are plenty of art academies, local ones, and also that offer online training that you're probably going to see a lot of them at Lightbox Expo. Maybe you find an artist that you really like and they have some kind of program or training that they do. Some people open up mentorships just like we do, and you can kind of shadow these people and learn what they know and really improve there. Okay, so I would look for those resources because they're probably a lot more accessible and a lot cheaper than enrolling into a program that is really expensive. One of the things I'm really proud of is that we are very aggressive with our pricing. We try and keep our prices for the courses that we do as cheap as possible, as affordable as possible, and we don't have like this requirement where you have to do any kind of prerequisites. I don't require you to learn English or any of that stuff as you go in here. Not that learning those things isn't a good thing, but it's our focus on visual storytelling. So might as well learn how to draw, get direct to what you're doing. So check those out. So if you're going to jump into that university level thing, look hard about what they're doing. If you're going to a traditional university, a traditional 4-year college, either in North America, Europe, or any one of these that have like a structured program, most of the time they require you to do these liberal arts prerequisites. That would include the English, the biology, the math, all that stuff. And that's very valuable. But my take on that is if you're going to be an artist and you're really serious about that, if you want to learn math, you can learn that on the side. You can learn that at a junior college. You can even learn that at MIT online. They publish their stuff for free. And it's probably a much better education than you're going to get at can you beat MIT for their math training? I don't know about that. So if you're really interested in that and you want to have a well-rounded education, there are many, many avenues for that. My advice here is if you're serious about art, by the time you get to the college level, dedicate yourself 100% to training and becoming a really good artist. The rewards are going to be tenfold. I know many artists that did not get a formal degree. They're already working in the industry and they're doing what they love and they're they're huge pros. In fact, I know people even back in the day, 20 years ago, that they straight from high school, they started working as artists, and they don't have a degree. There's no college degree there, but they're working as directors and very veteran story artists, extremely talented artists. And these are guys who are working at Pixar and Lucasfilm. These are people I've worked directly with. And it's just amazing to know that. And it's kind of like, wow, you listen to the story, like, oh, you never went to an art school, you never went to any formal training. They learned it somewhere. Some people say, well, I'm self-taught. I don't necessarily believe that. You learned it somewhere. You either learned it on the job or somebody taught you something to get there, okay? So I think you can do this for a much more affordable price. Now, what is the cost? That depends on what kind of program it is. It also depends on what you're doing on the side. Usually, you probably have to support yourself somehow. You got to pay your rent. You got to eat. You have to have, you're spending money, whatever. So in a college situation, that's some people will get a student loan and kind of get into debt, and that debt covers their living expenses while they're trying to study. Now that works for some, but if you're not able to have a successful portfolio when you get out of those big institutions, that's where you get into trouble, because the debt problem right now is really big. So one thing I did want to touch on before we jump into this question and answer stuff is a couple of the landmines that you want to avoid as you're getting into this training in the story artist career path. So let's assume you've gotten to the training and now you're looking to get jobs and jump out there and land with recruiters. One of the things that I think is really important is you have a professional presence. And that includes, now that sounds like a fancy term. What I mean by that is you want to have a really nice presentation for your portfolio. You want to have a professional resume. Now, you don't have to fill up your resume with all kinds of words and experience and work history. Really, the resume is just to understand where you came from, maybe what your training has been, what your past job experience is. And then usually I list a couple of software specific programs that I know that's related to the task that I'm going to be applying for. I always put a position objective in my resume because that really helps the HR department and the recruiters. Those are the people that are going to look at your work. You want to make sure that it's very clear what you're applying for. You would put something like seeking a position as a storyboard artist on a TV episodic production. That would be like a job objective, okay? And then you'd want to do a website, and you want to have either some kind of PDF portfolio or some way to send and quickly send digital artwork or samples to people. Now, people do this in many ways. You can have a reel that gets uploaded on Vimeo, for example. You can even password protect that stuff so that you make sure it doesn't get shared around, and you're protecting any sensitive material that you might have. That's one way to do it. You can also kind of export your images and have a slideshow of various images. And those are all really, really great ways to do it. So that's the way that you want to get in the industry, is having those things. Now, a couple of things that I think you'd want to avoid as pitfalls is understanding that if you get, let's say, a negative response from a company or a recruiter, or you get a lot of rejection letters, is to really be analytical about why you're getting these letters, or you're not getting traction. Maybe you get no responses whatsoever, even after putting a portfolio. That's what you want to get, honest feedback about the work that you're doing. And feedback is an interesting thing. You have to be able to analyze the feedback that you get and know where the person that's giving you feedback is coming from, okay? Now, some people have your interests in mind, and they point to that by actually giving you a pointed, let's say, advice that could help improve the drawings that you're doing. Others might give you things that you may not agree with, and you have to be able to understand that and filter it through. Okay, so that is an interesting thing about feedback, but getting honest feedback. If somebody is really looking at it and says, well, you know what? I don't see any action storyboard examples here in your portfolio, and what you're applying for is an action TV show. So what you need to do is fill your portfolio with action boards. Okay, that might be just a very simple series of comments that people give you, but maybe you missed that your portfolio is not as focused as it should be. And so that's just one example of what it could be. So that's something you want to check out, okay? All right. And I did want to mention one last thing for a couple of tips for success. In order to actually get traction in this industry and have a path for your career as a story artist, there's a couple of things that I would really encourage you to do. It's a mindset change that is very unique to the creative industry. And one is to have a curiosity for learning. This is something that I was lucky enough to have people tell this to me over and over again. They would mention that you never stop learning, that you should always be improving your art. And this was something that really got ingrained into me. And everywhere I go, now I can be set in my ways for a couple of things, but I always want to have that curiosity of new things. And that is learning new methods and looking at other people's artwork and understanding how they're doing their things. And maybe, seeing who's successful and then how they're navigating maybe in the industry stuff. And it's not necessarily artwork related, but that curiosity and that passion has to be there. And so that's one of the things that I would really impart to you, that it is very key and crucial that you think of this career path in a story artist as a long-term journey. And I say this often, but it is a marathon that you're working here. If you think of your career as spanning over 30 or 40 years, maybe, in the entertainment industry, knock on wood, hopefully that's something that we could all do. And if you're starting and you're just a couple of years in, then you want to pace yourself so that you continue to improve. And by the time you get a number of projects under your belt, you're going to have more confidence. But you don't ever want to get complacent. You want to make sure that you're always learning. And this could be something where you might take a couple of workshops from other people that they might be talking about storytelling. Maybe you go into a writer's workshop and you look at how people are writing stuff. Maybe you take up acting and you understand from the actor's perspective of how they interpret a scene. And that's something that you can take in as a visual storyteller that always helps. So lately, I'll just go back to my own personal story here and let you know of what I did to get into this industry. I started out at entry level. I worked my way around to get different positions and different jobs. I landed a couple of jobs as entry level story artist in animation. And then after that, I gained more and more experience. And as I was able to get, let's say, more high profile jobs and have more responsibility. After a while, after many years, I felt like I had the confidence in my filmmaking style and my staging sensibilities came through. And I felt like I had the ability to supervise and talk to more people and really kind of manage teams. And really, you get into kind of producing and directing. And lately, I've been doing that for my career. So I started off as a story artist. I got into directing, and then now what I'm doing recently is a lot of story development, is content creation and creating stories. So that's the conceptualization of a story from thin air, basically an idea. You actually start it off and write out the treatments and create the content, and then we create images and you take it all the way to the finish line. And that's something I feel like throughout the years I've learned and I'm now capable of doing. Now, am I the best at it? No, that's where that curiosity comes in, and I'm always learning. Every single job that I do, every new project that I'm into, I have to learn something. I want to make sure that I'm growing as an artist. One of the things that I think of is that if you're not growing, there's probably something wrong there. And that's where I take a hard look at things. And usually, at least myself, I will kind of pause. And at that point, I'll probably do a career shift and see how I can readjust to get to somewhere different and somewhere new. So anyway, that's a little bit brief description of some of the career paths. And I do want to get to some of your questions because it's been really blowing up here in the chat here. So thanks for hanging out. And I want to go in and scan this and make sure that we address a lot of these things so that everybody has an opportunity to get at least some advice to point you in the right direction. Oh, right. I see this really great conversation that's going on already. So this is really great. So very, very cool. This is interesting. I want to bring this up from Monty T. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Just a comment here. I actually dropped college after taking a semester, realizing that it wasn't giving me what I wanted art career-wise. And only, let's see, from those in the field, it's been so much more helpful. So I think what you're trying to say there is kind of what I've been repeating is that, if it's not valuable to you, it's not worth spending money on. It really isn't. And, I say, I'm the first to say that about the materials that we put out there. If it's not giving you anything of value, then, you should really think about that, because life is too short to waste on things that are not interesting to you and that you're not passionate about. Once you fall in love with something, you're going to find out how much better that is. Oh yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying here. Online. Okay, so let me repeat this, is that online from those in the field has been so much more helpful. The resources online right now are amazing, and this is the week to take advantage of it at Lightbox. There's so much good stuff that's happening right now. All right, let me bring up some more comments. Very cool. All right, Mitchell, thanks, buddy. I'm glad you could make this one. All right, this one is great. I'm going to bring your follow-up comment. What program is everybody using for animatics? And it looks like we got a big response from that. There's a lot of people doing Photoshop. This is actually excellent. For the response here from Photoshop and Davinci Resolve. I just recently got into Davinci, and I love it. I think it's so powerful. I thought Premiere was amazing, but Davinci is actually a very, very useful tool for doing many things, partly because it has the visual effects engine inside there with Fusion, and it's all, the color correction and everything that it's doing there is so great. So I love it. I use TV Paint as well. Yeah, you're right. It's not very cheap, but it is a good program. You can do a lot of really amazing 2D animation effects on there. I know Robert Valley used it on his Love, Death, Robots, the last production that he did. So that's one that's great. Now, I don't really recommend any software. I think you can do it in Toon Boom. I think you can do it in Photoshop. There's a lot of free programs out there. There's one called Storyboarder that is great. Procreate is a really low-cost program that works great for doing simple animatics and storyboards. So it's really what you like. I think kind of the standard, it is, there's a cost to it, but you can use Photoshop, and if you know Photoshop, you can usually apply those skills to creating animatics for any of the other programs. Okay, Gervain is asking here, any tips studying, practicing, getting better at perspective drawing? Yes, I have a couple of tips, and I say this often. One of the things is, if you don't understand the theory of perspective, I would get a good book on perspective, and there's many out there. I have a couple on my bookshelf that maybe I can pull out and show this later in the week. But How to Draw by Scott Robertson is a good one. It's a little bit dense, but it has all the information you're going to need. The reason I recommend a book is that it will take you through the steps of understanding what a horizon line is, the vanishing points, and what kind of the lens distortion that happens with perspective, and how to manipulate that, how to bring your vanishing points either closer or further apart, and understanding the difference between 1, 2, 3, and 5-point perspective. And if any of the stuff that I just mentioned is just like going way over your head, that's what that book is for. You sit down, you study. One of my personal favorites, which is not really a perspective book, but it does cover perspective. I really love Andrew Loomis and Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, because it covers drawing perspective of characters. And it also covers perspective just in general with the horizon line. There's a really great diagram in there where he has I think 20 or 15 characters in one scene. They're all in relation to each other and in perspective. And I had to really stare and break that down and look at it. But when I understood that and what he was doing there, how he was calculating how the figures were all in relation to each other, that's when something clicked, and I understood the relation between the vanishing points and the size differences. And there's tricks that you can use as a storyboard artist that are shortcuts, that it doesn't have to be 100% precise perspective, but you can kind of do these shortcuts that would help as you're drawing these things. The other tip here is, once you understand those things, once you got a good book, go out and draw some perspective stuff. Go out and draw a bunch of buildings, okay? These are things where you're gonna see those vanishing points converge in space. See if you can draw landscapes, okay, but one of the things that's difficult with a landscape scene, especially organic landscape where you have trees and bushes and like rivers and hills and stuff, they're not as rigid and kind of like, there's not as many angles. There's a lot of these organic shapes. So you could have two trees, but they're like different shapes and different sizes. You still have to understand perspective and know where your horizon line is. One of the things I call out is your horizon line is where your eye level is. And that's something that you want, that's where your camera height is, and that's where your eye level is. That's where you place your horizon line. So you can place it up high, you can place it down low. These are all kind of shortcuts that you want to be using. But I would recommend going out and drawing a series of buildings, houses, things that actually converge into space that might be a little bit complicated, and see if you can figure out what's going on there. Indoor shots. So if you're in a coffee shop in your own house, there's always like walls, right? You can draw that and figure out the perspective there. And I would also look at artists to see how they're doing that and how they're designing their perspective and distorting that. Kim Jung-gi is one that comes to mind, a Korean superstar that a lot of people know. He's amazing. And then, of course, you're going to see Robert Valley. He's one of the best in doing these warped, beautiful camera perspectives for drawing that. So it's all about practice, but understanding what you have to practice before you do that, okay? Let me bring this up from Paul. Hey, buddy, drawing every day has helped me get better over the years. I look through all my old sketchbooks and see how I've improved and sometimes review my visual notes. Yeah, these sketchbooks, they're really a great document because I can go back. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, ooh, that drawing was not that great. But then sometimes I go back and hey, that one's not so bad. I kind of like what I did there. And you do that, and it's good to keep a record of it. So that's why I like these physical books. Sometimes digging through folders on your computer is a little bit taxing, but I like to do that and have there. So I'm really glad that you do that. It's one of these things that you may not notice your improvement day to day, but you will notice it over 6 months, over a year. That's why after a year, I usually recommend people go back and look at their sketchbooks. So those are all really cool things to do. All right, here's a great one from Cheyenne here. Is there a list of good classic movies to watch and study from somewhere? Which ones are your favorites to study? I have actually a film list that I bring up in our mentorship program, and I encourage people to watch. I like Scorsese films. I like the Coen brothers films. Maybe some of you guys have some suggestions for Cheyenne here. Everybody's got their own taste. One of the things I would recommend, if there's a genre that you're into, if there's something that is like horror films, are you into horror? Are you into musicals? Are you into animated films that you could do that as a genre? Westerns, it could be anything. But take that and study those things. I know a lot of people are into kung fu and action films, and people get really deep into that. They study the Hong Kong cinema. They might look back at like the old Shaw Brothers films. And these are all things that are really great to know because that's what you're going to use as reference for the future. So I say you can't go wrong with the classic films. You really should know your film history. And I recommend looking back to the old film noir stuff. Orson Welles is one inspiration for me. I love those films. I love the Westerns. Certainly Sergio Leone and his Westerns are amazing, but John Ford and all of those films back in like the 70s and 60s and 70s, I think were really great. There's actually a couple in the 80s too that are pretty good. So this is great. Oh, we got another comment here from Sydney. Is Marshall Vandruff has an amazing intro perspective course for $12 on his site. Highly recommend it. The way he breaks things down is very intuitive and helpful. That's great. I've seen Marshall Vandruff stuff. That's awesome. I don't know about this perspective thing, but for $12, I mean, some books are more expensive than that. This is unbelievable that you can get this kind of a deal in today's day and age. I mean, think about that. If you had the opportunity to learn from Leonardo da Vinci, and he's offering a course for $12. I mean, isn't that amazing? Yeah, this is funny, Emma. Thanks. I know you had your issues with student loans and stuff. 9% interest. My friends, I say avoid this debt trap that sometimes we get into because it's just not worth it. I think it's, you can find better resources and not have to get into debt. That might be, that's one of the challenges I put to you. How about you figure out a way that you can become an artist and you do it debt free? use that money to travel. When I was young, I saved up a bunch of money and I said, screw it, I'm going to travel for a couple of years and learn something. Out of that trip, I landed a job and I ended up working in Europe for 3 years. So that was so worth it. And so I highly recommend that. I didn't have any debt back then. It was much better there. Okay. All right. Let me bring up another question here from Shelby. For live action, how much of the storyboard would typically translate to the final cut? That's a wonderful question. It depends on your production. I've worked on a couple of live action films, and I was pleasantly surprised that a lot of the material that I came up with collectively, right? I'm not the only person doing this, but a lot of the stuff that I came up with was used in the final production. And I was also surprised at the stuff that was changed, because that helped me understand what they did to either take the material that I presented and use it to their advantage, and then get rid of the stuff that they didn't want for various reasons. So that, it really depends. There are some films that will shot for shot will copy the storyboards, which I like. That's the way I like to work, is like, okay, just copy the boards. You're going to be fine if you copy my boards. But, I can't say that for certain what's going to happen on every production. Some live action films, they just use storyboards as inspirational, compositional tools to get inspiration. Now, a film like Fury Road with Mad Max and George Miller, they boarded out that whole film. The script was a storyboard. I looked at that script for that and I was like, wow, it was like a comic book. It was so awesome, so detailed, and every single shot was boarded out. So they did it like I really like to work, is that visual storytelling style. And that's one way to do it. But that's a very unique and particular production. So there's many ways to do the same thing. Great question. All right, let me scan this and come up with a couple of these. All right, here's a question. Oop, I missed it. Let me scan back to the list here. Wow, this is always blown up. You guys, there's so much good conversation going on here. This one I want to bring up from let's see, Rillo here. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Do you have any suggestions for where to create a website for a portfolio? I'm using ArtStation right now, but I would like something more personalized. ArtStation is not bad. I see a lot of ArtStation portfolios, and as long as you can see the work, that's great. So, Wix is one that I think a lot of people use. I kind of like Squarespace just because it's, there's a cost to it, but it's easy to manipulate. I use WordPress on my personal website, which is a real pain, to be honest, but I figured it out, so I get it working. Plus, I've had help. Thank you, Danielle, my tech buddy, who's really a relief helping me out on this stuff. So I think there's many out there. I think Wix has a free version. It really doesn't matter what website you use. What matters is what you're showing on the website, and just make it clean, make it easy to read, and make it professional. But ArtStation works fine. I think that's free too. Hey, Tim. Hey, good to see you, buddy. Sergio, always inspiring, always good advice. Thanks, my friend. You're part of our mentorship group. I'm part of the family there, and it's always great to see you too. Thanks, buddy. All right, let me scan down and get some more questions up here that I'll read. A lot of these have already been answered. This is so great. This is what I'm talking about with the community aspect of what we do here. So fantastic. By the way, are you sharing your stuff? You guys, as you're into going to these events, what you want to be doing is, as you post your questions, also throw in your IG handle, throw in your website, and just have people check it out. You may never know who is looking, and they might see these replays. Our chat lives on for these replays. They might click on your stuff, and you might actually get a couple clients for that. All right, let me bring this up from Lewis. Lewis Walker here is asking, hey, Sergio, wondering if you have any recommended challenges for storyboarding that an artist could do every day, week to practice the process of boarding. Well, you mentioned challenge, and this is what I'm talking about. How about this one? You get to the animatic challenge. Do that for this week. Just do that, okay? I recommend that one for one. That's easy to do, and you're gonna get that for the next 2 weeks. But I think other things to do that I think would be important is if you want to do story exercises, is grab a couple scripts. Now you can find stuff, just do a search online. And you might pick a show that you haven't seen before. You might pick something classic that maybe you want to do another interpretation of, or maybe you haven't seen that movie yet, and then you want to do your version, and then go and watch the film and see how close you get. Things like that could be really interesting to do. But you just want to practice. And I think a lot of what people get hung up on is they're just like, when you're staring at a blank page, they have no idea what they want to create. And so I think it's just really important that to have that kind of research done already. You might put a list, one of the days, over a couple hours, maybe go to a coffee shop, do some sketches, and then what you're going to write out is basically an idea list or a shot list of things that you want to produce and want to create, okay? And that way, the next time you go to your studio and you start doing some exercises, you don't have to think about it. You look at your list and you just go down the list one by one. You say, okay, Western topic. I'm going to board out a scene with one person coming into a Western bar and getting into a gunfight with somebody else. Could be anything like that. And you just see how it goes. You're going to board that out for a couple hours and see what you come up with. The next time you might want to do gags. You want to do single panel story images and create gags. That's one of the exercises that I really recommend doing, is doing single panel story images and seeing in one panel, can you create a story? We had that in our visual story course, and we also do that in our mentorship. So that's really cool. All right, let me see about this. Question from Australia Tim. Coming up in the industry, did you study movie storyboards? Any particular artists influence your current work? Yes, a lot. You know what I did early on in my career, and this was a recommendation from another animator. When I was studying stuff, he said, go and draw from the Disney films. And I hadn't really done that before. I didn't realize, once I did it, I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I would freeze frame the classic 2D animated films, and I would copy the expressions and the poses and the hand shapes, because the 2D animators, any good animated film would do that. And I would also do that for anime. So I would freeze frame things from like Akira, and, I like the ninja movies, so I like Ninja Scroll. I like Samurai Champloo. I think those are all amazing. Cowboy Bebop. And, I would just pause, freeze frame that. If there was a cool camera angle that I really like, I would draw the ships. I would draw the characters. So there I would actually just draw the movie stills. Okay, that's something that I would draw. Now, one of the things that I have, and I also have this on my bookshelf, is copying from guys like, well, I mentioned Akira, but Otomo. And I have the Steam Boy storyboard book, which I think is just unbelievable. You look at that book, and he did all the storyboards for that movie. And he came from the comic industry, and then of course he became a director. Just amazing storyboards. It's so clean, very confident line. And I'm looking at that, I just, wow, the shapes in there are so beautifully defined. And I just love that. And there's a bunch of books from Miyazaki too. You can look at the storyboard samples from the films that he did. So those are things that you can study. Now, are there any particular artists that influence me? I have a bunch of friends that I follow, and I think I was influenced when I keep in touch with my college buddies, and I think when we were coming up, we all just kind of banded together really well, and a lot of my friends have now become amazing, talented artists. These are visual designers, just matte painters, background artists, comic artists, and a lot of these are pretty well known. I don't want to call them out and embarrass them here, but I feel like I was inspired by them, and I can see the influences of their work in mine. And also guys like Robert Valley, I would, I'm not afraid to admit that I would look at his work and be like, damn, Robert, you're so awesome. And I would look at his comics, and I would look at his shorthand, and there were times I would sketch it out and copy that stuff, because I love the way he does his facial expressions and his hands. It's just a beautiful shorthand that he does. And those are kind of contemporary artists that I study. One of the classic illustrators that I really like are Dean Cornwell, Norman Rockwell, J.C. Leyendecker, and hopefully you guys know who they are. I have a bunch of their books that are on my bookshelf behind me, and I'd open them up, copy those things. So I think there's a lot of Cornwell influence in my drawings. There's a decent amount of Leyendecker influence. Rockwell I used to like a lot, and certainly his composition and his paintings. They're very they're so ultra rendered that it doesn't exactly have the graphic quality. They're so realistic. So I love Cornwell for his graphic quality, especially the studies and the drawings that he did. And then Leindecker, of course, everybody knows. Well, a lot of people should know who J.C. Leindecker is, but the way he's able to simplify his stuff is just great. All right, we're getting close to the end of this. I want to make sure that we cover all the topics here. I will put out another recommendation for checking out our event page, and you're going to see updates every single day. We're having a live stream all the way going until Sunday. And if you're not in that challenge already, at least go in there and check out people's work. And how about you give a couple of comments? Even if you're not doing the challenge, you go in there and say hi. How about you share it? If you're doing the challenge event, go and share that stuff on your social media. Tag us and tag me personally. You can find me at Sergio Paez Art on Instagram. And you can tag me on LinkedIn as well. Just do a search. I'm sure I'm there. I'm sure you can find me. And I'd love to comment on your work. I'd love to reshare it and give a nice like and hopefully give you some support for that. And then don't forget that this is the Lightbox week. That's what we're doing here. So one of the things I want you guys to do, and I'm going to bring this up on screen again, is I want us all to go to the Lightbox Discord page, because there's so much cool activity going on there. And there's a lot of live streams. There's just great conversations. And there's a storyboard specific channel. Let me bring this up so we can all take a look at. Let me bring this back up on screen and make it a little bit bigger. So this is our Discord. You go here. I'm part of the Lightbox Expo group, and we are sponsor for the event. But if you scroll down here in these halls, we got a hall in storyboarding, and I just want everybody in our group here to go in there and post their work, to really comment, and let's dominate that stuff. I want us as visual storytellers to be there, and that's a place where we can connect with others and really have a voice for what we're doing. And I want to take advantage of that and do some voice chatting and get in there, just say hi to people, and maybe post a couple images that we're doing. And maybe I'll dig up some of my archives and post that there too. So after this talk, I'll be hanging out there. But I just want to thank everybody for joining us. And if there's anything that you want to see and any of the stuff that you want to ask to the people that are in our event lineup, I highly recommend you get in touch with us or put a comment here in the chat, and make sure that you are getting your voice heard, and then we get these guys to answer your question and kind of specific things that you want to hear them talk about. And I will give one more shout out to our Animatic Challenge, bit.ly Animatic Challenge, and this is the link to sign up. You're going to see some amazing artwork when you come to our Discord. And also Facebook, we have a Facebook group that people are posting on there. So please, if you're on Facebook and you like posting that, by all means, share us. Make sure that we understand that you're posting, and that we can go in and give a like and give some comments to what you're doing. My friends, thank you for joining me today. It's been a wonderful pleasure to share a couple of ideas. Hopefully this inspires you that it is possible to be a visual storyteller. It is possible to have a career in visual storytelling and to really make it as an artist. You can have a career. It is possible to be an artist, make a good living, and stay employed. I've been doing it for going on 25 years now. So if I can do it, and I really do believe I come from humble beginnings. I was nothing special as an artist when I started out, and I feel like, man, I've done the work, and I've now have a lot more confidence in the way that I approach my projects. And I hope that you can get there too. And you do that with a passion and constant practice. Thank you, my friends. I really appreciate you joining me. We're going to end this one on our bumper logo. Take care, and we'll see you at Lightbox for tomorrow. I'm going to jump into the Discord right after this. So if you have any more questions, you can catch me there. All right, my friends, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.